The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Fridays here. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you will get our starting five shout-outs coming up here in the stream. As always, can log on, like, and subscribe to Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can watch the show that way or on Twitter, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed. Follow that as well at HVarsity Radio. Elijah, you ready for a weekend? You geared up? It's camp season, first 3 weekends for several talented prospects to find their way to Lincoln. Are you going camping this weekend?
No. I think 4th of July weekend might be the next good window. I have to do a little bit of camping. Weekend looks good right now. I mean, not
knock
much.
on wood storm-wise.
Knock on wood storm-wise. Hoping to get out for that Lord of the Rings movie marathon extended edition in theaters. We'll see. I haven't purchased tickets just yet because my weekend is a little bit up in the air. I have a little bit of work to do, obviously, with our Saturday morning show. Got some Salt Dogs to do this weekend. Got Rec League softball coming up this weekend, weather permitting. So not going to be a slow weekend by any means, but hoping to get a little rest and relaxation in there as well, hopefully in the form of Lord of the Rings.
So when you go to the movie theater, are you a beer guy or a mixed drink guy, or do you just go popcorn tub, soda / candy?
Popcorn tub, the large one, preferably 2.
The refill?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can eat one of those things. I've had some impressive popcorn eating performances in there. I think my record is almost 2 full large tubs by myself. Like, whenever I really want to get after it, I can, awesome. Especially for a long movie. Definitely not a beer or a mixed drink kind of guy, because I'm the kind of guy, if I drink one beer or one mixed drink, I'm just going to fall asleep in the movie theater. And you can't have that. I've already spent way too much money on this ticket along with the popcorn. So I stick to the popcorn, the soda, candy if I'm feeling dangerous, but usually not really. A salty treat is all I really need, or 10 pounds of it.
What about the friend or the female friend that smuggles in Halloween amounts of candy in their, or in her bag, or in a buddy's side pocket?
Well, here's a question. What's the craziest thing you've snuck into a movie theater? I've gotten some wild stuff. An entire Chipotle bowl I've gotten in there before.
Really?
Not hard.
Winter coat? Yeah. I mean, how okay.
Yeah, winter coat. Let's see. An entire
neighbor lady would, those giant family packs of Twizzlers.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
I mean, like the 7-pound bag almost. That got smuggled in one time. Then I whipped my brother with it, and he screamed, and I got put in timeout.
Back in the day, what is it? It's Noodles and Company. My aunt took us to a movie, and she stopped by a Noodles Company before and brought in like a box of mac and cheese for each my brother and myself whenever we went to a movie with her back in the day.
It was still cheaper than buying you little goons candy.
Once you realize that the theater employees really don't care all that much, it's when it gets a lot easier. It's just like, don't be obvious about it. Like just make half of an effort to hide it whenever you're carrying it in, and no one's going to care.
Make sure the cold beverage is in the red Solo cup when tailgating.
Yes, exactly.
Don't throw it in people's face of authority. Hey, we'll get into some football. Brian Christopherson, Husker247, going to be with us in about 15 minutes. We'll get his take on the recruiting weekend, some of the work Nebraska's done, and Mr. Hoofkin, of course, the get for the Big Red this week. I think BC's got a really nice story coming out this weekend on Hoofkin, so more thoughts there. Nebraska in hot pursuit for sure, as Douglas Utu wrapping up his visit. Some roster news to pass along as well. We'll get there in a moment. Question for our friends in the stream, and also can chime in on the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 489-1240 or 800-825 5865, Chris at hailvarsity.com. Where do you think or where do you expect Nebraska to live when it comes to the world of recruiting from a ranking standpoint? And if you're not a big ranking fan, that's fine too, but they have numbers next to your team name for a reason. Where do you come down? Our dear friend Jerry DiNardo, Big Ten Network, absolutely believes the ranking is a great indicator of where your team should be at the end of the year. And of course, you got to do the legwork and develop and retain that talent. And it's a bigger hurdle to get over in today's day and age with the portal and everything. But we can get into that a little bit. What is the expectation? Do you think Nebraska needs to be a top 15, a top 25, a top 30, or are you less concerned because of Rhule's history with that diamond in the rough ability? And I think what I think is going to happen is you're going to get your share of high-profile guys, and I think you're going to get your fair share of guys off the radar. And I think once you start developing both at a high level, where not only do you keep them around, but you get them to be as good as they can be, I think you can really have some winning football seasons.
I'm sorry.
What are you grinning
I'm
about?
I'm going to focus here. Rick chimes in and says he took Don and Millie's milkshakes into Edgewood in his girlfriend's purse.
Well played, Rick.
And then we also have Tiger Shark Diver saying he takes his stuff in his prison wallet.
That's pretty good. Off and running on a Friday. I love it. I love it. In hour two, I don't know if he's wearing a bow tie or seersucker. I know that's more of a spring derby thing. But the pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the Professor Bill Doleman is on a roadie. He's in Saratoga. He is going to the race tomorrow.
Oh.
So we will check in with Mr. Doleman from upstate New York.
He's been all
in
over.
hour two.
He's just been all over during his summer vacation. And this reminds me, Schmitty, now that I have a roommate who's a school teacher, we have Doleman who's a professor, why didn't we pick jobs that have a summer vacation? What's up with that? I love what I do. Don't get me wrong. I love what I do. Don't get me wrong. But there's those little moments where I see my roommate just playing video games on a weekday during the summertime. Why didn't I pick a job? Why don't most jobs have a summer vacation? That's a bigger question.
Yeah, it's a good question. The reality is, though, you've seen your roommate, the school teacher, and probably your brother on a Wednesday come home at 4 and collapse.
Yeah. Well,
because it was pure hell in the classroom that day.
It's less. I'm here at work at 4, so I come home from work later in the evening. I'm like, what have you done? He's like, I laid in my bed and just kind of sulked for 4 hours. And I go, oh man.
I cried. I had parent-teacher conferences. I've got 17 lesson plans. My principal's browbeating me. So there's my rebuttal. Clausborne set to join us at 5:40. He's imaginary, and he wears red. Let's get to some of the news of the day after we give our shout-outs. The starting five in the StreamYard. Patrick is in and is first. Got in at 3:05. Been hanging out. Patrick, appreciate you. Justin in at 2. Good to have Justin. Mike Corrigan, good to have you, Mike. Is hungry, apparently. Jeff Coe. Jeff, good to have you. Coach Brandon says present most days. And good to have Brandon in. The other Dave is here. Thank God it's Friday. Anyone started the libations yet?
Oh, no. Schmitty's frozen. Which leaves me in a very precarious spot here, because I don't know when he's going to return. Hopefully soon. For anyone watching on this stream, there is a quite hilarious just still of Schmitty having frozen up on our screen here. Oh, is he maybe back? I think he is back.
I am back.
Okay, I was filling time there. You froze up and went away, and I was just trying to fill time. I was panicking momentarily, but there was a hilarious still image of your face on the screen from where you froze up. I'll have to send a picture of it to you after the show. It was hilarious.
That'll be wonderful because it's not going to make your Twitter with some sort of snide comment this weekend. I left off. The other Dave is doing a little Sapphire and Tonic. Sal is in. Crew says, thank God, couldn't take another solo second of Elijah. Wow. And Montana Husker fan giving kudos to Patrick for being first. Matthew is in. Good to have Matthew. As always, Robert checks in. KG is here, which is wonderful. And the other Brian, Rick, with the smuggling story. Yep, Ryan, another Ryan checks in. And Elijah, I want to get your thoughts on this with Coach Pot Roast, Terrence Knighton, doing the boom gif from training day. And, of course, Denzel Washington, one of the best ever, got the boom scene from the little cafe at 5 a.m. with him and Ethan Hawke. So it sounds like Nebraska's recruiting is off to a good start.
A question I have is, and I don't want to read too far in this, did you see, Schmidt, just before our show started, it was Broderick Scholl officially committed to Auburn?
Really?
Yeah, just before our show started, which, I mean, kind of makes you wonder with the U2 visit. Not that he's committed, but U2 is in town, Scholl commits. I wonder what type of momentum Nebraska feels they have with a guy in Douglas U2. And I know the momentum has been trending in the direction of Auburn for probably about a week and a half on Broderick Scholl now. They've been coming after him hard. He's a guy that they really like. What does that mean for Nebraska's other options? Because we know Pot Roast has been involved in recruiting on both sides of the football, not just the defensive line. You saw that earlier this week with Hufkin down in Texas. We know that Pot Roast is recruiting him, even though it's likely that he's going to be an offensive lineman at the next level. Wonder if there is some sort of back pocket offensive lineman that Nebraska was talking to, and with Scholl going off to Auburn, is there somebody back pocket there? No one comes to mind off the top of my head, though, as being a potential silent commit right now for Coach Pot Roast and the Husker football coaching staff.
No, and listen, from an offensive tackle standpoint, Hufkin is going to be someone that's a project, and I'm not being derogatory with that, but he just needs to get watered. He's got the size and the frame. That's not great because they're two dudes they like to tackle. Scholl for sure, kid out of Oklahoma, and of course Sanders, but the rest of the world likes Sanders. But if Utu is just wrapping up his visit, it went great. We've seen the social media thanks and praise. I don't want to speculate about if he gave a silent other than Pot Roast is happy about something on the recruiting front.
And Millard North athlete, kind of defensive back, Caden Vermas also tweeted out 2 bull emojis followed by hashtag 25crew. Another thought that maybe there is somebody silently in this class that we don't yet know about, maybe soon to know about, maybe within this show. Again, no inside information there, but something is going on behind the scenes, and it sounds like some sort of silent commit. Whenever I see a bull or 2 bull emojis, I think probably offensive or defensive lineman.
Nope, it's a line of scrimmage.
Absolutely.
Hint for sure. Jay checks in and says, thanks to Elijah, there's now going to be pat downs every time you try and enter a theater.
No, there's not.
Thank you for admitting your transgression.
Those 17-year-old movie theater employees do not care enough.
No, they don't, which is fine. Scott says, I think the Huskers eventually settle in that 15 to 20 range yearly. We're asking how important is recruiting rankings to you? I think 15 to 20 is a great neighborhood to live in. Looking at Osborne's classes, they would range between 20 to 25, and that was the early years of when recruiting rankings came out. It was usually one publication, the Blue Chip magazine, right? But I think Nebraska will identify, they'll research, and they'll test. They'll see who they like, and I think we, at least through a year and going into year 2, can believe that the development phase, that's what's most important. Keep kids here, get them worked on, and things should take care of themselves.
And one thing I've said in the past regarding the recruiting rankings is I feel like there's tiers to it. It's not necessarily like hard and fast, because there is variation, and it kind of depends on like team needs and whatnot. But like I've said a couple times, I kind of see recruiting rankings as your top 5 is the top tier. If you're within that top 5, you have recruited better than anybody else in the country. And then I look like 5 to 15 is like kind of that secondary level where I don't see much difference between a class ranked 12th or 13th as compared to like 6th or 7th. There's another tier there, and then I look at 15 to 30 or 35 as being like that third tier. That's kind of where I sit. And I if you average out a couple of Matt Rule's classes, which is where you're going to have to go the first 4 or 5 years, average it out. That's more where I'm concerned about what tier Nebraska is in. Can they jump up into that second tier and be a top 15? Top 25 is obviously important, but those are kind of the tiers as I see them. So I don't see much of a difference between a class that's ranked 30th and, say, 22nd. I more wonder what tier they're going to fall in after a couple years.
No, that's fair. I think your first 4, your 1 through 4, your Bamas, your Ohio States, your Florida States, the Texases, I mean, those places have always lived in the top 5 to top 8. Ironically, some of Harbaugh's best recruiting years didn't yield best teams. So the hit rate's huge. You got to be at 50% on your hit rate for multiple years. We'll continue this discussion on recruiting rankings. Brian Christopherson on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Brian Christopherson with Husker247.com and Husker247 BC's, where you follow him on Twitter. BC, what's good? What's the weekend look like? How are you?
Weekend looks great. Got a little Friday Night Lights this evening, so I'll try to figure out who's who out there amongst like 300 high schoolers, and hopefully I'll get a program from somebody because I'm going to need help.
You know, you've seen a lot of Friday Night Lights in your time, man. And what are you anticipating with the second year of the Rule camp session?
I anticipate interesting offers to pop up that you don't expect. So it's one of those things where it's hard to preview, because you can't just say like, like these 6 to 8 names are who you're going to focus on. Like during the Riley era, it was a very effective deal. I mean, I'll always remember Micah Parsons showing up for Friday Night Lights and was just a freak of nature, as you would assume, and running routes as a wide receiver against just for fun, against 4-star cornerbacks and just burning them. I mean, just owning them. And you're like, that one of the biggest freaks I've ever seen. So when I think of Friday Night Lights, like Micah Parsons is the first name I always think of. But, in the Frost era, I'll be honest, I felt like it lost a little steam. It was an event, but you had a hard time, like, putting sort of the summary of, like, what was sometimes accomplished from it. I think in the Rule era, what stands out about all these camps in June is that kids show up who maybe they don't have an offer. Maybe they're not somebody who's even in the 24/7 Sports database yet, but they ball out in front of these coaches, and they have if they have the verified data of, like, speed and measurements kind of connected with that, they could leave with an offer. And like last year, a bunch of kids showed up who, Donovan Jones from Omaha North is a great example. Like, he came to the camp to try to get a Wyoming offer. That was his goal. And a few days later, he's a Husker, committed, offered. He wanted to do it, obviously. And so that's what's kind of fun about this month ahead, is it's pretty unpredictable. And the tone was sort of set this week, guys, down in Houston when they offer a big German who's 22 years old, David Hufken, and going to be a real interesting story as he gets here next month. But I feel like that was like a nice lead sentence to this whole month and like how things can go.
Brian Christopherson with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking some recruiting the upcoming month of camps, including Friday Night Lights camps. And Brian, one of the things that I saw some people freaking out on on Twitter was that David Huffkin yesterday was at an Oklahoma camp. People were saying, well, he just committed to Nebraska. Why is he at Oklahoma? I feel like one of the things that some people tend to forget in this is, like, at the end of the day, the coaching staffs, yes, they want to find some future recruits, but it's also like a learning opportunity for a lot of these kids. And you look at a kid like Huffkin, like, yeah, he needs all the football opportunity he can get. I don't think this coaching staff would be mad about him going off to Oklahoma to get more reps from some of the top coaches in the country.
Yeah, well, part of that deal is he's with the Gridiron Imports operation. It's an organization that helps international kids, and Chris Adamson, who's the founder of it, is touring those guys around. So they already had a planned tour in place, right? I mean, so they were at this camp one day, this camp the next, and then Oklahoma was the natural one that's next up on the schedule. So, yeah, by all means, David Huffkin should get out there. Yeah, I know they put on the Oklahoma shirt on him because that's what they do at camps like that. People got to just deal with it. But it sounded like he did pretty well. And if it eases people's nerves about this guy that they didn't even know existed 2 or 3 days ago, but now we have to hold on to for dear life. Great kid. And I talked to him yesterday, and I'm going to do a story on Sunday that's a bigger story on him after the Oklahoma camp. And he was all about his Nebraska situation, and they're already, the wheels are turning to, he's got to get his visa and all that stuff approved. Their I-20 form stuff I don't know about. But, he's working with admissions and all that. So he plans to be in Nebraska in July and hopefully late July at the latest. But that was the whole conversation I had with him after that camp was about Nebraska football and him saying, "Go Big Red," and how he's so jacked up. So I wouldn't worry about it if I were a fan.
BC, when we talk about Huffkin, this is a situation, and I don't want you to divulge too much because I can't wait to read your story Sunday, but this is a guy that really has had to grind to get back into football. Is that the gist?
Yeah, there's probably more to the story than I know, and that's for him to tell if he ever wants to tell it. He had some family-type situation where he had to really attend to family, and this was about 3 or 4 years ago. It was right when he was maybe going to take off here and have his chance. Like Chris Adamson said, that the guy who runs Gridiron Imports, right now, if things had sort of worked out as they originally were supposed to, David Huffkin would be in year 4 or something in a college program, and we'd know if it was a success or not and be talking about him maybe as a NFL guy if he's capable of that sort of thing. But he had to go back home, handle some business that was more important than the game, and did that. And he's been out of football a little bit, but people, I think, have seen some of the video of him, and he's got freak traits to him. I mean, a 9.4 broad jump would have done really well, at the combine, and it shows explosiveness for an offensive lineman. And if you look at his wingspan, it's huge for 6'7" guy. And he's also, I think he's 250 some now, but he can put on 40 pounds easily if O-line is the place for him, which it sounds like that's where they want to start him at. So he's going to take time to develop. He's not like a guy, even though he's joining the 24 roster, it'd be a stunner if we were talking about him this season, I think. But he's a guy you hope you can develop behind the scenes, and then maybe next spring or so you're starting to hear about him. And I think he's a mature guy who's been through a lot. And I think the advantage is Nebraska's got an offensive line room that has a great culture where the guys just they're all brothers. They hang out together all the time. And so I think they're going to accept him and probably be pretty intrigued to add him to the bunch. So why not? I think there's other schools like Oklahoma the other day that looked at him and probably understood why Nebraska did what they did. And you got to also, I think people saw the video. I mean, Terrence Knighton, when he offered him, said, "Hey, let's do this. Let's finalize this deal. We don't need a top 3 list from you or anything like that. Let's go." And that, to me, tells you Nebraska coaches really let's lock this guy up. We think there's something there.
BC, you talk about the road ahead for him. I want to get your thoughts. If it really came down to it, your job was on the line, how quickly do you think you could gain 40 pounds?
Not quickly at all. I've always been sort of stuck. It's not a gift because there's nothing to brag about here. As you guys know, I'm taking a kickboxing class right now to try to get this dad gut off, but I'm like a skinny fat guy, like one of those guys who's like, I don't weigh that much on the scale, but it's like you see the gut now, and it's just kind of disappointing. So, but I've always been sort of stuck around the same weight, and I don't know if maybe I don't get hard enough. We were talking this off air. I know Schmidt like goes to the weight room and just hangs out on his phone while he's on the bench and doesn't actually get stuff done. I probably am similar in that way. That's not true actually, but I am maybe that way, and because of it, it would be very hard for me to get 40 pounds. That would take. I hope I never do gain 40 pounds because it wouldn't fit my size very well. Like with my height.
I've done it before. I don't recommend it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try not to. But the good thing for David Hoofkin is he's 6'7", and he seems like he's capable. The funniest thing about that whole story was Chris Adamson was with those guys in Texas, and after their camping experience, they all went to a Waffle House. So I texted the guy, and I was like, when can you do an interview? He's like, I'll do it in like an hour. Right now I'm at a Waffle House with 25 Germans. And I just thought that would be like a great, like half-hour, like sitcom, or like it would be a good episode, like on a Thursday, back when there used to be sitcoms on Thursday night. That would have been a good show.
That's got to be another world for Germans to sit down in a Southern Waffle House. Like that's got to be a completely different world than anything they've ever experienced. I'd watch that.
I love America.
I'd never leave.
I assume somebody that was working that, there's that picture of the lady when the Popeyes chicken sandwich just came out and she's out like smoking a cig, and it's just like she just had it. Like I assume there was a person or two at that Waffle House who were like that after that experience.
So a visitor already this week, Douglas Utu, and
yeah.
I probably butchered that. I'm hoping not, but really high level line prospect. He's got the whole world offering him, and so far so good, BC, for Nebraska, at least with the social media thanks and praise and all of that. But Nebraska is not shy, are they, about going after some big dogs with many stars next to their name?
No, he's a 4-star guy, ranked 101st nationally by us. 6'5", 300. He comes out of the Bishop Gorman program, which of course is, kind of a really well-respected operation out in Las Vegas. Nebraska's gotten guys from there before. He just did visit Michigan over the weekend, and so yeah, you're right, Chris. I mean, it's going to be a tough competition, but I mean, this is where I think Nebraska feels like, why not us on some of these guys? Like they have a quarterback that draws other recruits in that they're really interested in maybe playing with, especially if you're on the offensive side of the ball. We all know too that Matt Rule, you watch his press conferences and just he has the gift for gab, right? I mean, he's just sort of got that ability to connect with people, and I think his staff does a good job on these official visits, as they explained to us a week or two ago, making sure all the coaches are around, everybody's available. And sort of by the end of 2 days, the hope, and usually what works, is that the recruit feels like, man, they really do have a family atmosphere over there. And I know some people listening, who are skeptical, would be like, yeah, I hear this all the time about Husker recruiting and all that. I do think right now, if you talk to current players on the roster, there's a genuine feeling of this is a close-knit operation, and the fact that you can have those players that are on the team now talk to these guys while they're visiting, say, yeah, this is what the true stuff is. What you see is what you get. That can go a long way, and you never know then. You might have a shot at a guy like this. So it's good to put your name in the ring, and obviously there's times where you might come up second or third in one like this, and you go on to the next one. But it was a nice midweek visit for Nebraska.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Brian Christopherson's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, and find BC on social media at Husker247 BC. Read him with Husker247.com. Where are you at with Christian Jones? And things are Obviously busy for the talented backer out of Omaha West Side. Auburn this weekend, USC. Do you like where Nebraska's at, BC, with Jones as far as maybe getting the last laugh, so to speak, the last visit?
I think so. Nebraska's my pick right now. It was interesting, he switched just the other day. He was going to go to USC this weekend, and now it's Auburn. So that's always sort of, okay, what's that all about? But I feel like Nebraska's really done the legwork here. Obviously, there's a lot of connections from his program at Westside to Husker football right now. With Caleb going there and everything like that, Tristan and all those guys. So I feel like Nebraska's in a good spot, and I feel like Christian Jones has always felt like this staff pursued him just like all the other staffs and hasn't taken him for granted. I think that's something this staff's done well too, is they haven't let in-state guys slide at all. Like they haven't. Christian Jones is obviously a 4-star guy you're obviously going to offer, but there's been other examples in the state where it's maybe someone who in the past. I was talking with Bellevue West coach Michael Huffman about this a few months ago. He said, in the past, sometimes Nebraska dragged their feet, maybe slow played a kid, and Iowa, whomever, gets in there first, and sort of the players a little bit wondering, okay, how do I actually stand with this staff? I think Rule's staff has done good about not really playing that game. If they felt like a guy is good enough to offer, and you would offer him if he lived in Kansas City, don't slow play it because he lives in Nebraska and assume that you can go get him later. So I think they've done a nice job with that. I know I rambled away from Christian Jones, but I do feel like they have a really good shot with that one. I'm optimistic, and if you said right now, make your call, I still think Nebraska. Oklahoma does get a visit with them, so you got to keep that in mind. But Huskers have done the work there, so you just got to see where it goes now.
Brian, you said something super important there about Nebraska and the rest of the state when it comes to that mentality and not taking them for granted. And it's a different era. It's a different Nebraska. And quite honestly, Nebraska is trying to get back to a place where all the in-state kids want to go. They've had other options, other offers, and the border's invisible, where you have programs like in Notre Dame, not just in Iowa, but there's a ton of folks nationally, Alabama, Oregon. I mean, you name it, they've all come in and got kids. So I think it's super wise that this staff treats them on a high priority, whether they're 15 minutes away or 1,500 miles away. And I think that's good. I think it's burned Nebraska in the past.
Yeah, I think so too. I also think it used to be, when we were younger, if Nebraska didn't offer a kid, unfortunately, there's probably some kids who missed out because of this. Other schools would be like, well, why didn't Nebraska offer them? We're not going to either. This was sort of before the huddle era and all this stuff.
Right.
And now you're exactly right. There's not really anyone under a rock anymore. I mean, once in a while you'll hear a story where it's kind of like that, but even that you're a little I don't know. He's got 3 huddle videos of seasons out there. So everybody sort of can be out there if they want to, and they can go camp somewhere. And that brings us back to the full circle here with the camps. It's nowadays, some kid from Ohio could show up this weekend or from, outside of the country, and he could put up the work and really impress these coaches, and he has an offer. And then suddenly his whole recruiting picture has changed. But I do think this coaching staff understands you can't just wait around twiddling your thumbs now with guys just because they're in state, because football here is respected by other coaches. Iowa State respect it. The other old Big 8 schools will come in here sometimes. And you're right, Notre Dame now will get in here. We had, Kirby Smart. I don't know if he flew into Ainsworth, but they're interested in Carter Nelson, that's for sure. So you gotta be proactive to protect your ground. And obviously, with the number of commits they have so far, they've done pretty well with it.
It's Brian Christopherson with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brian, before we get you out here. That kind of sparked an interesting thought, what you just said, how much harder it is for somebody to kind of slip through the cracks in the modern recruiting with the eyes on huddle and all the summer camps that these kids go to. With that in mind, are you going to be following along where Nebraska's recruiting ranking is this summer and into fall? Does that matter more to you now with just the amount of focus there is on recruiting, both from teams and from recruiting services every single year? Does the recruiting ranking mean more to you now than it did, say, 10 years ago?
That's a really good question. It means, I would say the same to me. I don't think this staff is overly concerned about it. That's because, we had this meeting with recruiting personnel a couple weeks ago where they talked with the media, and Ryan Callahan, who works over there, was talking about like their recruiting database, and he says the best in the country as far as like verified data on all these recruits and stuff. And you saw it with the offer of David Hoofkin. It's like they knew they liked the measurables, the testing, and they saw them up close. They said, we don't need to have 3 other schools offer this guy first to vindicate what we think we know. We trust in it, and so we're going to offer. And so if you think about that then, and you have that mindset, you're not going to worry if what you believe in your process ends up having you rank 31st or 18th. You're going to just say, we trust our process, and we'll see what the results are in 3 years, get back to us. And I think that's more how this staff is. For me, it's sort of the same. I still think it's a good measurement, you want to be, I think, in the top 25, top 20. And I think Rule's staff will mostly have classes that are in that range. But they're going to also have some guys, too, that like weren't ranked who suddenly become 3 stars because Nebraska got them. They're going to take some guys like that sometimes, and they're not going to be shy about it.
BC, have yourself a weekend. I will make sure I get the film going in the weight room to just prove
I know
next
you get
time.
after it. That was a low blow by me because you talked about you actually said I don't pull out the phone. You guys put it in your pocket, which is a really nice move. I'm meanwhile scrolling on X and end up doing like half the reps you guys do, and that's why I'm struggling to make it through a half hour, with my kickboxing class. But we'll see where I am in like 10 weeks. I'm in a program, and we'll see where that takes me.
BC, next time we get into a bar scuffle, we're bringing you with because of that kickboxing pedigree. So don't doubt yourself, my friend.
All right.
You say next time like we've ever been in a bar scuffle.
No, I know. Listen, it's all narrative. Have a good weekend, man. We'll run you down again. Thanks for a few minutes.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Always appreciate being on.
Good to have a few minutes with Brian Christopherson. He tweeted out a little while ago as well. Jaden Haney at camp tonight as the beasts are in from out back, racing around. And Elijah's like, just get us to the finish line this segment. We'll wind down hour 1. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, we will take a trip up to Saratoga Springs, upstate New York. In about 10 minutes, Pride of Fairbury on the move again. Bill Doleman going to join us. So you've got the Preakness, correct? You've got the Kentucky Derby, Belmont, and then the Preakness, and Doleman is going to be all we'll see if he'll be gussied up or if he's going infield tomorrow.
Well, and I think
for the race.
One of the questions we have to ask him, what's the over-under going to be for horses euthanized on the track tomorrow?
Jeez.
You don't like the dark humor a little bit? Hey, it's a reality of horse racing.
We're a month removed from the Derby. Okay. So,
and thank God there were no euthanizations at the Derby. There were none, I don't think, which is good.
I know, but that's because they did them all last year.
It's a reality of horse racing.
The window for horse euthanization smack is 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby.
I think it's any time there's a horse race, but that's just me.
Cliff is in from Florida. Good to have you, Cliff. NASCAR Eric has checked in as well. Scott talks about our recruiting topic. That topic being what neighborhood, what tier should Nebraska be in? We ran out of time a little bit earlier, Elijah, but you were talking about that second tier. First tier, clearly your Georgias, your Bamas, LSUs, those folks, Ohio States, Michigan, although
Michigan's been, honestly, if you look back at the rankings over the past 5 years, they've been more of a tier
teams.
2. They're more of a tier 2, the 5 to 15 range, which kind of shows you, like, hey, being top 5 in the recruiting rankings is not be-all, end-all. It's much rarer to see teams outside the top 15 jump up into that top 15, but I'm also curious to see how that changes now with the expanded 12-team college football playoff. Where does your team have to sit now in a 12-team college football playoff to give yourself a chance with? You can assume more teams making it into the playoffs, meaning more than likely there's going to be a better distribution of recruits from just, you know what, there's not just 4 teams that you have to go to if you want to make a college football playoff. There's more potential teams, which makes me think maybe that range of where you can be recruiting-wise to go make a playoff is going to expand as well, where right now it's probably in that top 5 you'd like to be in most years to make a playoff. I wouldn't be shocked if it moves out to almost the top 20 moving forward just because, hey, teams with a recruiting ranking of 15 to 20 are still making college football playoffs with proper development.
Well, you need to be in the top 5 of your conference. That's the shift. You got to be in that top 5 in the Big Ten, your top 5 in the SEC. I think it's safe to assume your top 4 will go, and a strong 5th team for each, possibly. But no, you're right. Michigan, they got better when they were in that teen ranking versus some of the Jabril Peppers of the world, who are great players, NFL guys, but they didn't always deliver. I'll say the tier 3 guys, the Minnesotas and Wisconsins of the world, Kansas, right? And even Northwestern with Fitz there when they won the Big Ten West a couple of times, they were 30 or way beyond. So that comes into the development.
Can I say one more thing about Michigan? No, Michigan wasn't always top 5, but what you can see when you look back in their recruiting history is that those teams that went to the college football playoff, they weren't missing those top 3-4 guys in their class very often. The 5-star or 2 that they did get, or the super high 4-stars they hit almost every single time.
Bill Doleman, I'm sure, will have a take on recruiting, and we'll see who he's betting tomorrow. Hour 2 coming up on Hail Varsity.
He's the pride of Fairbury, an average Joe. Bill Doleman, the professor.
I had a 6 ACT in 1967. One time I got an A and my grandma beat me for cheating.
Now with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. He is the pride of Fairbury. NBC Sports, the professor. He is at Saratoga. And we had a generous caller, Derby, Preakness, Belmont, as he is in upstate New York, the World Tour 2024 of one Bill Doleman. We get a great shot of Bill's ear right now as he's trying to hear the topics. Bill, tell us about the tour. Tell us about upstate New York, your trackside, man. And folks can watch on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, as Bill is our live correspondent. He is going to hit the trifecta for us tomorrow. What's up, man?
Well, we're going to give this a shot only because it is such a cool scene at Saratoga Raceway Park, where tomorrow the Belmont will be run. They're upgrading the facilities down in Queens. So for the next 2 years, tomorrow and in 2025, the third leg of the Triple Crown is going to be here. I got to tell you, and I don't know how well you can hear me, it is spectacular. Saratoga Springs, I worked up here many, many times up in Lake Placid doing winter sports events for NBC, and it is one of the most gorgeous places on earth just to come up and visit, provided it's not snowing like 2 feet. But it's beautiful up here, and it's pretty cool. I don't know if you all can see, but this historic racetrack is amazing. There's a lot of old school charm to it. And there's going to be, they say it's going to be quite the sight tomorrow. Right now, we're in the process of putting my name on the deed to the place because we pretty much own the track today. Myself and my buddies, Big Jim, Bobby Bell, and Wolfie are here. Mike Beecham.
He froze. It was a rundown of nicknames, probably like Pinto and Otter and Fraternity Bros.
Oh,
we got you now. You froze for a second, Billy D. You're running down the hit list.
I'm with you. It's kind of hard to hear, but it's just too cool of a scene not to see if folks on the stream.
No, stream folks are loving it. They're checking it out. So who are you betting on tomorrow? Let's get that out of the way before we talk some football and recruiting.
Yeah, I just said a moment ago they're putting my name on the D, but actually I'm betting on a lot of losers. There's some of the ponies right over there. We did run into Eddie Olczyk, NBC, TNT, horse racing expert and a hockey analyst. We saw him earlier today. I can't remember the horse that he has picked out for tomorrow. Not Sierra Leone, but it's one of the other favorites. So that's been pretty cool.
It's funny, Bill, you say
it's not like the average Joe sports show remotes that we used to do at State Fair Park. Little different here.
Bill,
well, you're as close as we were. We were trackside on the stage for the Average Joe roadies 20 years ago at State Fair Park. But yeah, you're in the third leg of the Triple Crown within neighing distance. So I defer to you.
Well, suffice it to say, this is a pretty cool place. And regardless of whether you come to watch the ponies, this is one of the most beautiful places in the country.
And it's funny, Bill, you said your betting strategy tomorrow is to bet on a lot of losers. That's actually what happened with our bosses whenever they paired up me and Schmidt together. They said, we're going to bet on these losers and see what happens.
Wow.
And what did I do? I joined you. How about that?
Bill Doleman, live Saratoga Springs, third leg of the Triple Crown, Belmont. And that is running tomorrow. That'll be on TV. Bill will be trackside screaming, "Run, Pio my, run." So gotta ask you, Bill, you're in a really cool area with upstate New York, Adirondacks, lots of, well, tell me, man, when it comes to the Adirondacks, I mean, just some cool hole-in-the-wall bars, some really cool restaurants. I know you're there for the race with your dudes, but what's the activities outside of the track like before we talk?
Oh, without a doubt. We went to an Italian restaurant last night. We did not know if it was for show or for business, but of course there were some people outside walking and talking. I assume to avoid wiretaps, but again, that might have been part of the show. I don't know. And we were not going to ask. We just respectfully let them have their conversation and walked quickly past that. But it was a very nondescript Italian restaurant that people would go, why are we going into this strip mall? Fantastic food at Mamma Mia's. But yeah, there's plenty of hole in the walls, and I'm sure we'll find a couple of them. But look, you come for the racing, but you also come for the historic stories that you got to believe are true, right? But I'm not going to ask any questions.
No.
Yeah, speaking of holes in the wall, don't look behind the toilets at any Italian bathroom or any Italian restaurants. No. Shout out to the Godfather.
People mind their business. The food is good.
Yeah. Trust me. Every trip to the bathroom last night started the conversation of did you leave it where it needed to be left? Right.
That's funny.
Leave the take the cannoli, leave all that stuff.
Bill, in the world of horse racing, long shots pay off. In the world of recruiting, Matt Rule has done a wonderful job of finding some guys. Hassan Reddick comes to mind that not only thrived for him at Temple, but has been a difference maker when it comes to getting after quarterbacks in Philly. Nebraska able to get locked in Hoofkin, the German, 6'7", 260 to work on the offensive line for Nebraska. Friday night, one of 3 Friday night light camps tonight at Memorial Stadium. What's your take on the Rule recruiting machine and where does Nebraska live, in your opinion, from a ranking standpoint?
Well, I think one of the benefits, for Nebraska, a couple things. First of all, you have a coach who has a plan, and he can come in like any coach and say they have one. But I think we've seen over the last year and a half that there is one, and it's being executed. And that's right off the bat when you see the success, at least in getting into homes in Texas, right? That's been significant for Nebraska to continue to come up in conversations for 4- and 5-star guys down in Texas. Now, whether or not they get them or not, that remains to be seen. But if you don't get them this year, maybe you get 1 or 2 in subsequent years in 25, 26, 27. I think it's pretty significant, and they're on. I think it's significant when you see inroads to, the running back from Missouri. Mm-hmm. And you start to see the names of the assistant coaches who are having an impact in those areas. You really have not heard Rob Dvorak's name all that much in the last couple of years because of, so much.
Well, Billy D is frozen Han Solo style. As he's streaming us live video-wise.
I think we're back now.
We're back now.
But now you're starting to hear,
It's a roller coaster ride, this interview. It really is.
A little bit. It's been pretty decent.
I think just stay in one spot.
Okay.
For the work that E.J. Barthel did and Quentin Ives in Connecticut. But to get the attention that Nebraska is getting in Missouri shows you that I think what Nebraska has done in Texas is filtering out into other states. And the work that the peer recruiting that Dylan Raiola is apparently doing with the pictures that are popping up on social media. I mean, you got players who bought in who are now all in and wanting other players to at least take a look. The Raiola thing, it's already starting to pay off in really, really big ways. Just for the fact that he came here and the attention that he's getting and the players that he's coming, Nebraska's got a plan. And I think it's been pretty impressive. And we talked about it on the Average Joe Sports Show podcast last week. Nebraska's at 8 commitments. I think you're going to see Nebraska double the commitments through June. And I think you're going to see 2 5-stars probably put Nebraska either give their commitment or put them in their finals. And I think that step with Gardner, the running back, is just another indication of that.
It's Bill Doleman with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking his favorite subject, that would be recruiting, as it's a big month of recruiting upcoming for Matt Rule and the Husker football coaching staff. And Bill, as you look at this, a question we had back in hour 1, I'm really curious to get your take on it. Do recruiting rankings matter? Whenever you have this composite at the end of every single recruiting cycle, ranking the recruiting classes, does it matter in your mind where Nebraska ends up?
Elijah, how long have you known me? What matters, I think, okay, look, I'm willing to buy into if you're having some success. If you have a recruiting class, I'll say if you're in the top 30s, is it great to have a top 5? Yeah, maybe. But if you are recruiting at a top 30 level consistently, you're probably going to be a top 30 level program consistently. You drop off from 30 to 60, 60 to 90, and however many teams there are going to be in the Super League of college, the college NFL, the CNFL. I think if you group it by 30s, you're in the top 30 recruiting, you're going to be a top 30 program. And then it comes down to execution. It comes down to wins. It comes down to consistent success. But people need to look at what consistent success is going to be in the future of college football. And I said this 20 years ago when we predicted all this. If you win 9 games, you've got a chance to win a national championship. The days of 12 consistent 12-0, 13-0, 14-0 seasons, that's going to go away. People need to understand your college football team is going to look like an NFL football team, where the best of the best are 12-4, 13-4, something like that, right? So you're going to have 3 and 4 losses a year and still have a chance to win a national championship, and the way college football is going to be made up. So you have to have those kind of recruiting classes that are consistently in the top 30 because you're consistently going to see the best teams 9-3, 9-4, 10-3, something like that. That's just the way it's going to be, and people have to accept that.
Bill Doleman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Bill is live at Saratoga Springs talking some recruiting. He is doing the third leg of the Triple Crown, a dude's trip with him and some buddies.
And if you're not catching this via the live stream on YouTube or on Twitter, you're missing out. Every single time we ask Bill a question, we get Bill POV of the race course. It is the best. This is one of the better, more scenic interviews we've ever had on this show.
Bill, wanted to ask you about some of Troy Dannon's comments when it comes to the collective and where things are going, and pretty good write-up by, or I should say, thoughts by our friend Mitch Sherman with Locked On and his podcast. And, of course, Mitch did a lot of stuff with us on Average Joe. But that is shifting and pivoting now too, isn't it? Because it's going to be different, Bill, for collectives. They're still important. They're still vital. You still need folks like that in your corner if you're a big-time college football or big-time athletic department. But it's just going to be kind of a new world in the athletic department itself, with being able to handle players directly now that things have been settled lawsuit-wise.
Well, what I think, if you look at, I think it's footballscoop.com, which is a place that people go to all the time at the end of football season because of the coaching carousel. There's a much lengthier article about what Troy Dannon said than what I've seen posted on Twitter over the last couple of days, because apparently the video or the longer form has been taken down. But I read it on Football Scoop, and it's a pretty long article about that really kind of details what Dannon was talking about from their perspective. Look, at some point, the have-nots amongst the haves. And what I mean by that are those programs that are going to be 30, 60, and on down. At some point, they've got to say to the Ohio States, the Michigans, Oregons, maybe Nebraska, Alabama, the SEC, the elite schools, they're going to have to say, look, we're going to be all in with you, but we have got to have some parameters on what the salary cap is going to be in college football. Kansas State, Iowa State, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, Utah, some of these schools are going to say, look, we are in with you, and we're going to be your opponents, and we're going to play the game, but at some point, you are going to have to dial it back. Just like teams in the NFL with salary caps, you're going to have to set a parameter so that those schools 30 and below can play. There's going to be a salary cap, okay? Now, what that means for NIL collectives, and Dan has said in April that they're going to go away. I'm not sure they're going to go away, because you can't tell a player, look, the salary cap amongst the university and whatever's going to get dispersed to volleyball and wrestling and baseball and softball and all that, that's also going to be a factor in how much revenue sharing there is going to be. But you're not going to be able to tell a player or an athlete in any sport, well, you can only make what's part of the $20 million or $30 million that we're allocating. That's going to be on them to go out and privatize their own little enterprise. So I think the schools are going to be on the hook for a salary cap that everybody's going to be able to play with. And then any other money that those players are going to go, those athletes are going to go make is probably going to be on their own. And it's whatever they're going to be able to make based on what their agents are able to procure for them. You're going to have a union. You're going to be unionized. I don't know if it's going to be all of the sports or if it's just going to be football only, but there's going to be a salary cap that everybody's going to have to play under.
Bill Doleman live from Saratoga. Bill, you got 2 more minutes in you?
Say again?
You have 2 more minutes in you.
Yeah, I do.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity live in Saratoga Springs. Bill Doleman, third leg of the Triple Crown tomorrow. He's on a dude roadie. It's been the Doleman World Tour of 2024. It's been Mississippi. It's been Destin. It's been other parts of Florida, now upstate New York. Bill, just real quick, we like talking about and catching up with Joel Klatt during Big Ten Media Days. and interested to kind of get your take on the playoff. Great stuff on the NIL thoughts and recruiting. But want to wind down real quick with Klatt's thought on the playoff field. Once it grows, and if it keeps growing to 16, his thought, and I think we've all maybe moved this way, the worry about turning college football into college basketball, in the sense that your attention during the regular season isn't what it used to be in college basketball. You turn in for the tournament those 3 weeks and away you go. Or if you're on the bubble, end of February, March, right? In the conference tournament before the selection show. Do you stay at 12, maybe at most 14, a la the NFL, 7 playoff teams from each conference, and protect the end of that regular season so you have a ton to play for with those helmet matchups in the world of college football? Do you keep it at this tight 12 or maybe 14, 16? Is that jumping the shark or beyond if you keep expanding?
Okay. Before I get to that, I just want to let you know it smells like Colorado here for all of a sudden. But anyway,
let me see your left hand.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Anyway, I didn't know
Mr. Ed's blazing away in the stable, huh?
I didn't know everything was legal in New York. But anyway,
it's for the inflammation in those horse joints.
But getting back to the question, look, I don't think the playoffs should go beyond 8 myself. Look, they went to 12. Why are you going to 12? You're giving the best 4 teams buys anyway, right? So those teams are already going to get an advantage to get to the semifinal and the championship. So why they stopped at 12? Why not go to 16? Okay. Yeah. Is there going to be an issue with getting down to the end of the season where teams that are potentially going to be in the playoff decide, well, let's just, cruise through the end of November into a conference championship game, or if that even matters anymore, and head into the round of 16 teams. You can't go beyond 16. That'd be ludicrous. But I think 12 is too many myself. Why I don't think college football is going to fall into the college basketball trap is because there's still an opportunity to have big games like Nebraska, Colorado, where there's going to be interest. Texas, Oklahoma will still have their rivalry early on. You're going to have a late season rivalry with Nebraska, Iowa, or Texas A&M are going to have to play again. Alabama and Auburn, you're still going to have big rivalry games that will be played at the end of the season, to where you're not going to want to coast through those to get to a conference championship game. So that's one area where I do think that protects college football a little bit. But you're right. Nobody's paying attention to college basketball really at the end of November and through December and barely into January. They don't pay attention to the NBA until after Christmas. Remember, Christmas is the big day for, basketball to begin the morning all the way into the evening. So the NBA even acknowledges that nobody's paying attention to basketball until you get to the holidays. But I do think because of rivalry games, because of the potential for big name matchups in the expanded conferences, Nebraska playing UCLA in September down the road, or Nebraska having a conference game against a Wisconsin or a Michigan or Ohio State, those games in September, October will always have somewhat of an interest. And if the best of the best teams don't want to put forth their best effort when it comes to rivalry weekend, say with the Iron Bowl or the Michigan State game, I mean, those are hate rivalries. I don't think that fans are going to allow their schools to coast into a potential playoff game and take it easy and just, we're going to be in the conference championship, or, we're going to be in the top 16, so we'll be in the playoff.
Bill Doleman's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Another funny screen grab here as Bill froze.
Live at Saratoga. Okay, you cut out. We got you back.
Well, I was just saying, I don't think fan bases are going to allow teams to coast through rivalry games at the end of the season And that's why I think college football will be somewhat protected from the lack of interest that has befallen college basketball. I mean, people really, it used to be conference season, and that's when they pay attention. But it has unfortunately been filtered down in college basketball to the end of February, March, and the first weekend of April. And it's unfortunate. But and all these restructured conferences now, it's going to be interesting how college basketball does survive. Because if the ACC goes away, a lot of college basketball is built on what happens with Duke and North Carolina. Just that one rivalry alone could suffer dramatically. And how much is that going to hurt college basketball? That remains to be seen. But all this conference realignment in college basketball, it's going to be hurt even more.
Bill, one thing I have a question about is specifically regarding postseason play in a 12-team college football playoff. So much talk has been about Nebraska this year. The baseline expectation is go and make a bowl game. Do any bowl games besides the college football playoff matter anymore now in a 12-team college football playoff?
Well, I think they matter because of for TV programming. That's why college bowl games have taken a hit in the last few years. But ESPN
Wait for it. We got to get him out after this.
Yeah.
With the
I think bowl games will survive to a certain extent because they are still important to college fan bases to get a chance to play over the holidays. They're diluted. There's no question about it, right? Nebraska's had some bad records over the last 20 years, but those teams are good enough to play in bowl games compared to those teams that have made it into bowl games. That's just conference ties that have allowed them to get in and play. But ESPN will pay for games. There will be bowl games. There will be fan bases that will travel for the holidays. Are there going to be, what is there, 40 bowl games now? I'm not sure they'll have that many, but there will probably be between 20 and 30 bowl games that will, be rewards for nice seasons for those teams that don't make the top 16. There are going to be teams in the top 16 that don't deserve to be in the playoff, but they're going to get in because just like in March Madness, those lower level conferences or whomever will get the nice Cinderella bids to play. But let's face it, if you're in the 9 through 16, do you think you really have a chance to win 3 games and win a national championship in college football? No. They're it's just more inventory for ESPN and Fox and whomever's going to be in the TV game down the road to play.
Bill Doleman, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor at Bill Doleman on Twitter, your Average Joe Sports Show podcast man, live at Belmont, live at Saratoga Springs for the third leg of the Triple Crown. Billy D, have a good time, party on, and enjoy your road to upstate New York. Thanks for joining us in some overtime.
Always good to be with you and always having a boys' trip to playgrounds like this. So have a good weekend. Go Big Red.
All right, there he is, Bill Doleman from Saratoga Springs. Live camera shot there. Hope you caught that on the stream. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel. That was awesome. Great perspective from Bill. Plenty of stuff covered there. Elijah, we have a top 4 released by Jalen Williams, who's camping right now down at Memorial Stadium. It's Nebraska. It's Michigan. 4-star defensive line, Palatine, Illinois. Nebraska's been working hard. Pot Roast working hard on him. It's Nebraska, it's A&M, it's Michigan, it's Tennessee. So that's good.
But that is a guy that we talked about with Greg Smith yesterday about being a heavy lean towards Michigan at this current time.
It's a heavy lift, but you got him here.
Yes. Well, you're going to have him here, presumably. He's going to be in Ann Arbor, I believe, this weekend. And the question is will he remain uncommitted to that point where you're going to have him in Lincoln? That remains a question right now. Another question we keep on getting in the stream is Ethan Nation. As reports coming out today, Ethan Nation no longer with the team. Any thoughts? My take is it's a guy that is likely, from what we're hearing out of spring football, not going to be on the too deep with the emergence of Bly Hill. Was probably going to be involved primarily on special team next season, unless you had a couple of injuries. I know the portal isn't open, but it kind of reads to me as a guy who is getting out now, and next time the portal opens, he's going to be in that portal looking for a new stop, because as I kind of laid out, I don't think he was going to be heavily involved unless there was some sort of injury with a starting capacity.
Here's the question with Nation. You heard his name talked about, and it was mentioned as a guy that could play that opposite corner, okay, from Tommy Hill. Is he one of your 4 or 5 best defensive backs? How much progress, growth did he make this spring? The other thing he was talked about being able to do is being your punt return guy, okay? And the way it sounds and feels right now, and this is just, again, my 2 cents, you've got Bly Hill, you've got Jeremiah Charles, both those guys, and Boodle as well, from a corner/return option. And I think if you just look at the depth chart, to your point, I think that's it. I think it's a guy that is going to explore other options clearly. It's not on the depth chart. A few walk-ons also eliminated from the roster, and that's too bad, but you wish nothing but success and best things, best wishes moving forward from Ethan Nation, because guy's fantastic athlete, put his time in Lincoln, and Nebraska is not ever going to stop recruiting. They're not ever going to stop bringing in talent. And the word of the day every day is compete at Nebraska. And it's not that you don't want to compete, but how buried are you? And you can look and say, I'm not better than that dude or that dude or that dude. And I don't know that I would see much time. So that's my quick reaction on Ethan Nation.
And also, Nebraska is going to have to get creative with scholarship guys, considering they're over the scholarship limit. Mm-hmm. Is he a guy that maybe they talked about getting creative with? I don't know. I'm just trying to read into things here. Nebraska, though, some natural attrition is necessary between now and the start of fall camp.
Absolutely. Clausborne coming up. Friday forecast on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel can always check the show and get the rewind via the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the segments you want, or the entire show if you like. Check that out. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback. Love the criticism, constructively, of course. And like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Hail Varsity YouTube. Find on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. And a reminder about your friends with the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We are efforting Claus. We'll see if Clausborne, he's imaginary, and wears red. He'll be with us for some forecast and commentary. Elijah gives me the thumbs up. You saw it too if you're streaming. And we welcome in from parts unknown, the infamous Clausborne. Claus, how we doing on this Friday?
Well, I feel the need to apologize. I might have been a little bit late. You see, the FBI released their documents on O.J. Simpson, and I've been reading them. Turns out he might not have been a very good guy.
Claus, wait. Thanks for that.
What gives you that inclination?
Well, I don't want to give spoilers to your loyal listeners, who I assume are voracious readers. But when you get to the part about 1994 is when it really gets good.
Or bad.
Air quote good. Without further ado, as Claus has given us a quick preview on OJ and the FBI, Claus, let's dive in. Know you're a hockey guy. Have you purchased seats in that one section of Edmonton fans?
Well, I feel like that would be similar to purchasing seats in the old black hole at the Oakland Coliseum, or really anywhere in a restaurant where Dan Beebe is currently dining. So I don't feel like putting myself through that sort of thing, but I hope the boys have fun.
Well, were you surprised at how rowdy it got with some of the Oilers faithful? I mean, it must have got hot in there because sweaters were coming off.
Well, I'm not too surprised when you come from a country where all there is to do is slide out on the ice, beat each other with sticks, and drink Labatt's and Molson. You got to find something to occupy your time, and so I think we can probably solve the situation by sitting the boys down for 5 minutes each, telling them to just be nice. I think that's how Gary Bettman would handle it.
Claus is with us here, the Friday forecast on Hail Varsity Radio. Claus, let's talk Game 2 of the NBA Finals. The Mavs walloped by Boston in the Garden. And how are you feeling being close to the situation with the Mavs and this series? Can it go 6? Can it go 7? Or do you think Dallas is in trouble?
Well, as you mentioned, I am a bit of a Mavericks fan. They seem to be the only one that likes to draft Nebraska players, with Eric Strickland and Isaiah Roby going there. And frankly, with a name like Nowitzki, you'd think that he was not from Germany, but Howells. So I've got a little bit of an affection for him. But I was a little bit upset watching the conference finals when I heard the TNT analysts engraving the Larry O'Brien trophy already with the Boston Celtics name. And then about 6 minutes into the first quarter, I offered to finish it off for him because I don't think this series is going to go very well.
Claus with us here on another edition of the Friday forecast as we talk some NBA. We'll get to some other things here in just a second, but I want to stick with the NBA here real fast. Claus, what's your take on Kyrie Irving and his flat earth beliefs? This has been well publicized before. He's tried to walk it back. Putting you a little on the spot here, though, but does that make you want to root for him more or less? I know you're a bit of a world traveler.
Well, honestly, I am a world traveler, and I can assure you the world is round, but it kind of makes me root for Kyrie just a little bit more because the fella needs to make his money now. When he gets out of the league, I don't think he's going to be able to teach any kindergartens to supplement that income, if you know what I'm saying.
Claus, let's talk about Danny Hurley and the Lakers. Would you take the Lakers job? Would you coach again? And would you coach LeBron?
Well, I would certainly consider anybody who's any job that's willing to give me money. I mean, I do this every week and I don't get paid, so wouldn't be so bad to be in sunny Southern California until you remember that I'd be forced to draft Bronny, and then I'd have to deal with Kendrick Perkins blowing up my phone and going nuclear. So I think I'll probably pass on that one and wish Mr. Hurley all the success that Nick Saban had in Miami.
Claus with us here on Hail Varsity Radio as we get his thoughts on some of the week that's been. And Claus, what about David Hufkin, 6'7" German committing to Nebraska earlier this week? I think there's some Borat comparisons to be made there. I want to get your thoughts on what you see in Hufkin.
Well, anytime you pick up a gigantic German, of course, I just mentioned my affinity for the Dallas Mavericks, and they've got the most famous big German. But anytime you pick up a big German, you start to really like your chances if we ever schedule Poland. So I think that's a quad one win if we're able to beat Poland.
Wow. 6'7", 260, and
moving on.
Quad 1 wins is what Claus is about. Claus will wind it down. Are you a little taken aback at just all the heat Caitlin Clark's been getting from fellow peers in the WNBA?
Well, obviously, I think it's natural for those athletes who have put in a lot of work and a lot of time and reached the WNBA and have been there for a few years. It's probably natural to feel a little bit jealous of someone who's suddenly drawing the eyes that they never were. And so I get the jealousy, I get the little bit of chip on the shoulder, but I don't get the violence, her getting knocked down and beat up and thrown around. And so I know they had to institute the Jordan rules for the Detroit Pistons. Maybe time to do that. Or it may be time to get an enforcer like a lot of folks have been talking about. Perhaps we turn to the Gretzky-era hockey to get our solution. Frankly, they've got to do something, because I'm worried if a certain member of the Phoenix Mercury decides to take her aggression out on Caitlin Clark, she'll be dead before she hits the court, and then the hit with the court will be so hard it'll bring her right back to life. And, of course, I'm talking about Diana Taurasi. So if we're going to protect her from Dirty Diana, we got to do something.
Claus, enjoy your weekend. We appreciate you much.
Okay.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good times today with Hail Varsity. Friday edition almost wrapped up. Weekend edition tomorrow, bright and early. Stream us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. That's where you can find us. 7:45 tomorrow morning. Elijah's got a little bit of a grin when I say 7:45. Mark Cranack will be with us, and we'll be at it about a week from today. It is Omaha bound for us for the CWS. Can't wait to be on the road for that. That'll be awesome at Zipline right by the Chuck. So fired up. We've been at Zipline the last several years. They're great folks. We love them and appreciate them hosting us. So if you're making your way down to the Chuck, come see us throughout the CWS and pop on by. Have a cold one. Eat Beef is in. Good to have you. And we had Tuck wanting Clausborne to try and spell gonorrhea again. It's been 2 weeks since the spelling bee, or one? 1 week? 1 week.
Because it was right after the Florida-Nebraska game in the regional.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a week ago.
Yeah, way to just end this show on a depressing note. Elijah's loss. The most embarrassed Elijah has ever been on this radio program.
There's time.
Hey. That wasn't the right answer.
No, there's time. There's time. Vic in Denver giving me hell about my gallon of water I'm drinking. So plans tonight, you heading out to the bar with some fellas or no?
I actually got a text from my roommates like, hey guys, who wants to have a bonfire in the backyard tonight? And I'm like, it is going to be thunderstorming with 70-mile-per-hour winds. What are you guys talking about? They were really excited
not
for
till
a bonfire.
Not till 8 or 8:30.
Do you know when I get home from work?
No.
8 or 8:30.
Yeah. So they will have had an incredible experience with the bonfire.
Yeah, and I hated to just put an absolute pin in all their ideas, but hey, sometimes you got to do it. I was like, did nobody check the weather forecast before deciding to go sit outside tonight? So I don't know. The other thoughts: Dollaritas at Applebee's.
Free shout out Friday, apparently.
That's just $1 margaritas. That's cool. We have a dartboard at my house that maybe we'll set up in the basement and get some darts going. I really don't know. It's open world. The last thing I'll say is there's a new Godzilla movie on Netflix. It's the Japanese one, not Godzilla versus Kong. Godzilla -1. It did really, really well according to critics and in the awards this year. I've been meaning to watch it. That might be on my list tonight.
Well, do you guys ever just have one too many and just ditch the darts and grab the crossbow and apples on top of heads and let's check the aim for the middle?
No, sometimes we grab the boxing gloves, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Drunken boxing?
It hasn't been for a while. I wouldn't call it drunken either. Like, what? It's no fun if you're, like, drunk. Like, it's got to be, like, just a couple beers in. A little feisty, I guess.
You are unbeaten, I would presume, with the height and the reach advantage in the house.
There was a draw one time, but we don't talk about that draw.
There we go.
I think I think I had the total strikes landed, but I also had a bit of a bloody nose after that one. So
oh no,
yeah,
it's no good.
Happens.
So we'll check in with you tomorrow. Hail Varsity YouTube channel, weekend edition. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking us out with Hail Varsity. Appreciate you much for listening, and talk tomorrow.